Hello YouTube, I've been using Cursor ID for a while now, so I decided to make a video sharing my thoughts on it and also showing some of the tips that I incorporate in my workflow in hopes that someone else might find it useful. For a bit of context about myself, I've been a professional software developer for the past 5 years, so I'm not entirely new to coding. I've used quite a few AI assisting tools, and so far Cursor has been my favorite. It's not a perfect tool, mind you, but it's still a great tool. And whether you're entirely new to coding or you're a seasoned developer, I think you'll still find some value in it. And that being said, let's get into it. My first tip shouldn't be anything new if you're already used to Git, but if you're a new programmer, do not forget to set your gitignore file. In addition to preventing you from committing M files and the likes of that, you really don't want to be sending your API keys to an LLM. And by default, Cursor ignores all files that are in the gitignore, so that's the very first thing you should be setting before you add any sensitive info to your M files. So don't forget that. Speaking of LLMs, choose the right LLM for the task. The best model I found so far, or the one I like to work with most of the time, the one I've had the most consistent results with, is the new Claude model. I think the Claude models are leaps and bounds ahead of the competition. I've tried the O1 models for a bit. I've tried a few tasks with them, but I've had some mixed results. I find they are way too verbose and they sometimes over-engineer the solution. So my personal favorite is the new Claude model. If I do need to send some images to it just to replicate the UI or to get something from the UI, I use the older version because we can send images as context, which is honestly really helpful at times. But yeah, overall I found this is the best one. That being said, try different models for different tasks, see what works best for you, what you like best. But yeah, my advice is to just use this all-around model because it's honestly really good. Another really important thing for getting good results is actually sending the LLM the right amount of context it needs to solve your problem. If you send too little, it won't get the full picture, so it won't be able to help you very much. And on the other hand, if you send too much context, you'll probably just drown it in information and the response might not be that helpful either. So finding the right amount of context to send really is key. I've been working on this app and I've just found there's a bug in the analytics section where income is being counted as an expense, which is obviously wrong. So let's see if the LLM can help us with that one. Yeah, I'll send this route as context and the schema as well, so it understands the categories. And let's just say there's a bug in the pie chart and largest expense income is being counted as expense, and let's see what it comes up with. I've actually run out of fast requests this month, so we'll need to wait a bit before we get a reply. And we got our response back, and it's saying that we should filter out the income category, which sounds about right. Before you go and accept any changes the LLM gives you, just be critical about it, really analyze the response. If you don't understand the code, if you don't understand what it's trying to do, just ask it to rework it, to refactor, to explain it, if you don't think it's good enough. Because if you introduce code that you don't really understand, it might seem like a good idea at the time, but you might be breaking something else in your app, or you might regret it later, really. So just try and be critical about it. But in this case, it's such a simple change, and I think it makes sense. So let's accept it and see if it fixed our issue, which it didn't. So at this point, it looks like we didn't give it enough context. We're filtering the data in the front end, but it's probably coming back wrong from the repository itself. So let's give it a bit more context and say that didn't fix it. Look at the analytics repository. And let's wait for another reply and see if it gets it right this time. Okay, yep, so it's saying it was coming wrong from the repository itself. We should be filtering out the categories. Yep, that looks good. Let's accept it. And yeah, now it's actually fixed. So like I was saying, just giving it the proper amount of context is really key if you want to get good results out of this tool, really. Now let's see if there's something else we can improve in the repository, because I think there's quite a few performance improvements that could be done, and let's see what it comes up with. Please do a full review of the analytics repository. Focus on performance. Please justify your changes. This is great if you're a junior developer or someone who has a bit less experience. If you ask it to justify its changes, not only will it be more careful around the changes it makes, but you'll also be able to understand them, which is really important to understand your own code base, not to introduce any bugs or for long-term maintenance or deploying projects to production. It's really important that you maintain a good, proper understanding of your own code base. If you don't really understand something, just ask it to explain, to justify. It will really help you in the long run. And let's see what it actually did. Okay, so it combines multiple queries wherever possible, which makes perfect sense to reduce the database round trips. At the time zones are really a pain, so let's see if it's handled it properly. Okay, and use the reduce instead of the several filters that we had there. Okay, yeah, those seem like sensible changes. We can just see if they make sense. Yeah, okay, this looks good. This looks good. So as you can see, it's you can ask it to do regular reviews of your code to explain the changes. You can keep doing this, and it's really good for helping your code base remain clean and for yourself to maintain a good, proper understanding of your own code base. For my last tips, as you can see, this file has grown quite large over time, which isn't ideal. We should keep it as focused as possible, not only for our own maintainability, but also because when we send it as context to the LLM, instead of sending one super large file, we send much more focused files. So it's not really ideal that it has become this large. So let's use another great tool of Cursor, which is the Composer, which is a multi-file editor. And let's tell it to this file has grown quite large. Please extract repositories to separate files. And this Composer is actually a great tool because it's a multi-file editor which actually creates the files for you. And let's see if it handles this refactor well or not. Let's find out. Okay, it's creating the files now. Okay. Yeah, it's just creating the boilerplate for the files with all the types. And it's removing the code. I won't do that just yet, but I will accept this. Okay. Yeah, we had quite a bit of code in there. It wasn't able to process it all. At this point, we could just copy the files manually to here, or we can just tell it to, yes, please, transactions. And it will actually copy the code to our new repository, which is much less stressful for ourselves. Okay, it's saying there's a linter error even. It created a utils file. Let's have a look at that one. Okay, yeah, cool. There was actually a function there that shouldn't have been there, a util function. And it found that out and actually moved it out. And now it's actually generated the transaction repository code. Yeah, and it just copied out the code to the new file. So now we just needed to do the same for all the other files. We can also do it manually in this case, but nonetheless, it's you can see it working. It even saw that there was an util function there that it needed to extract to a different file. So yeah, this is another great tool of Cursor that I really like. Although I don't use it as often as the shot, but yeah, it's a great tool nonetheless. And that's it for this video. I hope you got a good sense of what Cursor does and how you can use it. Hope you find it useful, and I'll see you in the next one.